welcome indeed. Thank you guys for checking us out. We're finally doing it, you guys. You guys have been asking. We're finally freaking doing it. We're finally putting together information on video for all the questions, all the things you guys were asking us. We finally got time to put it together, so we're glad you guys are taking time to join us. For you guys who don't know, I'm Lim.
And I am Paul.
And we are Team Hookset. Now, we are not complete without OGKC. Together we are chasing the record.
Yes.
He is behind the lens like always. Photographer extraordinaire.
Very dedicated bass fisherman as well.
Definitely. Can't leave OGKC out. But, first we're going to start let you guys know some background about us. Because you guys see all the fish, you guys see all the pictures, you know we fish every day. But who is Team Hookset? Who are they?
Well, first off, we're brothers. We're from Georgia. We each have been fishing for bass over 30 years. We started out in Georgia. Not to be redundant, but my point is we've covered bass fishing, trout fishing, cat fishing, every type of fish you can imagine. And it just so happens our father's side of the family, they've been guiding for saltwater for over 70, 80 years combined. Our great-grandfather, our uncle, our dad, our cousin, they're all captains now. And, it's fun. But in my opinion, it's too easy and I enjoy it, but I love a challenge, and bass fishing offers that. And fishing for bass allows you to learn to catch every other type of fish that swims.
Easily. Very easily. Bass are, they're the apex predators of freshwater lakes, so you gotta make them do what they gotta do to get on your hook. And, it's great that bass fishing is so popular because everyone knows about bass tournaments. Everyone knows that you can get paid to fish. And that is the goal that we are on. Our goal is to win Bassmasters multiple times.
I'm shooting for 5.
At least 5. At least 5. 5 out of the next.
5 would be nice.
5's pretty good. 5's good. But
I win a tournament with myself every day. Remember, everybody, there's no such thing as competition out there.
Nope.
The only competition in this world is you the day before today. And strive to be better than you were yesterday, and you never lose a day.
And don't worry about yesterday. Fish don't eat all the time.
No.
But you can still catch them mostly all the time if you're dedicated. Now, sometimes, of course, it always takes a little bit of luck, but if you put together the right techniques, the right philosophies, the right ideas, the right times, you'll put yourself in a better position to be a little bit more successful. So we're definitely going to cover all of that for you guys here today. Hey, Paul, what month is it? Is it January?
It's January 1st, or...
What is today, 13th?
13th of January,
Hump Day.
2021. And,
wintertime.
We live in Colorado, presently. And right now, there are certain lakes that obviously are frozen. It's dead of winter. But there are a few lakes that never freeze here. You can imagine that. Along the Front Range, there are certain mountains that block weather systems, and they prevent that cold from rolling across the body of water like it should, versus other parts of the Front Range. Some of these lakes also have springs in them, and groundwater typically is in the lower to upper 30s, above freezing is the whole point. And if you can find that and the day gets windy, doesn't have to even be sunny. If it's windy enough, that water under the ice will blow over the ice and melt it. Obviously, in the middle of winter, those conditions sometimes aren't the best to be fishing, but often throughout the year, no matter if it's warm or cold, some of the worst fishing weather is when the biggest bass eat.
So it is January, it's winter, it's cold, it's Colorado. A lot of the lakes around town are man-made bowls, they're dug out. They're not natural lakes, they don't have much natural structure, so it's even more difficult to find them on a regular basis. But where are they in the wintertime? We've already been able to be lucky enough to catch a fish a piece this calendar year, early in the year actually, December the 3rd.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all, January. Normally everything's frozen. But when it is warmer, when we do get a stroke of good luck, Paul, where are the winter fish, man? Where are the bass?
First, it depends on where you live. And, typically lakes are broken down into Highland Reservoirs, Lowland Reservoirs, or Midland. And pretty much Highland Reservoirs, like you described at first, a hole in the ground with not much structure. They often are I won't say void of grass, but they don't typically have too much grass. If they do have grass, it usually does not last throughout the winter. So if you're back east, you're probably going to be fishing Lowland Reservoir, which will probably have grass and wood, and it might not have that much depth. Or if it does have a lot of depth, you will be able to target some areas where it's not that deep. And a lot of people believe that fish go deep in the winter. That's only if they have to. And there are fish that live their whole life in shallow water. Some go back and forth, and some that try to stay deep. Obviously, all fish have to spot. So, where are they in the wintertime? We're in Denver, and first thing we try to do, see if there's any open water. And let me tell you, that can be some miles in the car, but I don't care, to tell you the truth. Anyway, so if you're able to find a lake that's open, you want to try to find a lake that is not that deep, but has wood and grass. And the reason you want to look for those things is because in the winter, as grass decays, it gives off heat. At the same time, the heat that it gives off dissolves oxygen, so sometimes if you catch fish early spring, lake will melt, you might see a few fish that died. A lot of times they were just actually sitting on decaying grass, trying to stay warm, and they suffocated. I've actually caught crappie in the spring, they've got algae growing on their cheeks.
That's some freaky stuff.
And they're perfectly alive, but sometimes it grows along their eye into their nostrils, and they were just sitting still so long in that cold water that algae started growing on them. So, wintertime, let's say you find a lake that's spotted, it's got grass and wood. How do you attack these fish? Number one, fish in the wintertime, first thing you want to look at is the weather. If it's been low pressure or a warming trend, say it's first, second day of a warming trend, it's even better. But those trends typically come after a cold front. So the first day after a cold front is typically very difficult to get bit.
Especially out here.
And if it's sunny after a cold front, that means the fish have a great view of your presentation. In Colorado, it's typically sunny over 350 days a year, which a lot of people don't understand that. Maybe not 350, that might be a little high, but it's the sunshine
300-ish.
300. So what that means is all these fish have the best look at your bait out of anywhere I've ever fished, to tell you the truth. A lot of fish, or fishermen, think that a lake is muddy when it's actually barely stained, and what they're looking at is plankton. In the wintertime, most plankton does not reproduce like it does in the summer and warmer water, so lakes clear up, and most sediment falls faster, even if the plankton was out, because cold water. So the lakes are typically very clear, which means all those things put together means you need the most realistic presentation for these fish that you can give them. And I'm talking about appearance alone. Not how the bait looks or how the bait works, not your light or anything, but just the visual image that the fish gets is so key in the wintertime, because the clearer the water, the colder the fish, the better they can see, and that gives them their ability to make their mind up way before you would probably believe it. So, these are all the different lures that we actually have caught fish on or have gotten bit. I have not caught a bass on this in the winter, but I've gotten 3 strikes on it. Fish just shook off. We generally start with jerkbaits in the wintertime. The reason we do that is even though the water is freezing cold, fish still move in the winter. So in the summertime, they're chasing like this. In the winter, they're chasing like this. And it's true, the fish's metabolism does slow down in the wintertime. But there are days that a few degrees can make that metabolism speed up. A few degree change can make the food that's taken a week to digest be gone in 10 minutes. And these fish will position themselves in the water column if they know a warm front's coming to just try to stay warm. And keep in mind, you all, this is all about shallow water fishing in the winter right now, because all bass that are female have to have sunlight hit their eggs so they develop in the spring. This is also the reason fish have to eat, mainly females, but all fish because they would just die. So
Alright, so we know the type of lakes that we have around town. We know what to expect in the conditions as this type of year for the water. What is the bass primarily eating this time of year? Is it shad? You know, most of the shad die off in the fall and the spring. I mean, in the winter time, but you know, a lot of them survive. But think about what shad do, though. They always swim around. What are bass?
Bass are ambush predators. And yes, bass love shad. They love to eat them. But bass don't actually opt for chasing their food source all around all day. They'd rather sit there and conserve all their energy. This is a common thing amongst all predators, even underwater. If I have to walk 10 miles to get my lunch, I'm not going to be that happy about it. But if my lunch is going to come to me 10 miles to my front doorstep, I'll take it that way, and that's how most predators think. So, reality is a bass actually prefers to eat a bluegill. Bluegill, when they run from a bass or swim, or no matter how a bluegill moves, they never swim continuously. They always stop. Even if a bluegill is running for its life, it will zigzag and dart faster than you could ever reel a bait, but they always stop. Shad, they will just keep going. And a bass really is not really down to do that, especially in the wintertime. So, bluegill also eat all year round. They feed on underwater insects, invertebrates, and these dragonfly nymphs, these mayflies that come out in the spring. All these insects are midgeworms underwater, and like I said, you're looking for grass and wood. These are the places that these insect larvae live in all winter. So if a fish can find grass and wood, he's got everything he needs. He can get warmth, cover, food, and wood radiates heat.
Sounds like paradise.
It's paradise in the wintertime, so they don't have to move much. And if you've got a constant source of bluegill, which are picking off these things, they're probably going to sit there all winter. Shad, larger shad, they feed on what's called Demetrius. It is the algae and lake buildup that filters to the bottom of the lake. And big gizzard shad that are able to survive the winter cold temperatures, that's what they feed on. They're typically offshore, and these things grow on rocks. So that's not generally where you're going to find bass, unless they're huge fish. But once again, this food source is constantly moving. Big fish, typically this time of year, moving closer to the spawning grounds. If the spawning grounds are super deep water, it's probably going to be near a steep bank that they can move throughout the water column in the daytime if the sun happens to come out. But jerkbaits, the reason I mentioned all that is why in the winter these lures decide to move forward, pause, and stop. Just like the bluegill. Don't actually have to be imitating the bluegill. You can throw a shad pattern, but it's still moving the same way. It's moving forward, pausing. That is more enticing to a bass year-round, especially in the wintertime. A lot of people believe these fish don't move fast in the winter. They move just as fast as they do in the summer. They'd rather not. And to tell you the truth, we catch a large number of our fish on lipless crankbaits in the wintertime. But like I said, your job every time you get to the water is to figure out what they're doing. And to figure out what they're doing is give them a presentation that they can be seen from the middle, surface, or bottom. And a jerkbait can cover the middle of the water column, and it gives it a long time for these fish to see in that clear, cold water. So, you hear a lot about cadence, things like that. You let the fish tell you what to do. I would suggest that your line selection is what most people focus on. Welcome back, everybody. I think I left off on line.
Line with jerkbaits.
All right.
Movement. Cold water.
Line with jerkbaits. Number one, I don't think any fisherman enjoys losing the lure.
No.
I don't.
No.
Even if it was free and I found it on the ground, I don't like losing anything. And I pick up lures I'm not even going to use. Throw them in the tackle box.
Yeah.
These are baits I can give away. Anyway, I prefer to use heavy line, and I'm only saying it's heavy line because most people never throw line the size we do for the lures that we use it on. 15-pound fluorocarbon, 16-pound fluorocarbon is what I throw jerkbaits on. That's pretty much year-round. I don't care where I'm throwing it. I'm starting with 15, and I might go up to 20, I tell you the truth. And that sounds really heavy, but this is based off of where you're targeting your fish. Back to that, I like losing lures. And so I try to pair my baits in the wintertime, especially on a jerkbait, with line that can bend out, or almost bend out, the hooks on the lure. And this is because I target wood, and just 3 sets of treble hooks, you have a good chance of getting hung up. You'd be surprised at how well these baits work through wood in the wintertime, but you gotta remember the water's freezing cold, and algae takes over more so than grass. Algae covers the surface of all the hard surfaces in the lake. So even though those treble hooks got, great chance of getting hung, first thing it's gonna do is coat slime off that wood, and it's usually gonna cover each bar, allow you most of the time to get your bait back. So if you feel that, you're obviously gonna change, you feel the vibrations and the different vibes in your bait if it gets covered in grass or wood. Often, once you feel that, rip it, give it a quick rip, or 2 or 3, whatever's necessary, but most times it will remove whatever is hindering the action of your bait, it will clean it off. And you want to get in the habit of that. I've seen a lot of people growing up and throughout my life reel into some grass or something and reel that bait all the way in and then recast it to clean it off. Well, you can rip that off, and that actually can induce a strike, especially in the wintertime. Bass are curious animals. They can see really well, they can hear really well. Sound cherries underwater better than in the air. And so as an example, say you get this bait covered in algae or mud or something on the bottom, then you rip it off. That bait's gonna come out clean, leaving a big ball of debris and mud and algae. We've literally seen this happen countless times. Fish will come and investigate that ball, and all the bait fish will come investigate it. As they see the predators approach, they bolt out. If your bait's sitting there, what's gonna get eaten? Your bait. So, 15-pound line. Most people target jerk baits, especially in the winter, 8, 10, or 12. I don't like using that pound line because, number one,
It'll snap when you cast.
number two, lost far too many fish on it. And I've caught a lot of fish on 12, but I've had to cut off 30, 40 feet of line in between fish, which is expensive and time consuming. 15 allows me to have the strength I'm looking for. I can feel comfortable throwing it over rocks or wood. Plus that fluorocarbon is going to sink and get my bait. This is Smithwick Road. It's very light, it's hard to cast, so I'll give it to you. Some of these lures are very difficult to cast on a heavier line, 15 or up. So if that's the situation, if you're in a windy day, try to get this behind your back. It helps you get a little more distance. Thing is, these baits don't get very deep. 15 pound, I can get this bait down to 9+ feet easy. I can get almost any jerk bait I own that's not designed to go more than 7 feet down to 15+ feet. This is an EMA stick. This thing is designed to go and suspend in 15+ feet of water. I've been on like getting it down to 28 feet with 15-pound tests. Thing is, it's time consuming. And you've got to understand when that line's sinking, it's bowing. Fluorocarbon will sink all the way till over 3/4 of it's flush along the bottom. As the angler, you've got to compensate for that, and that's even if your line's at 12-pound test. You got to remember, these long pauses you hear about taking with jerk baits, that's all time that your line's not pausing. It's sinking the whole time. So, once you allow your line to completely sink in the bottom on a lighter version bait, that lets you get that bait that much deeper. But you've got to compensate as you retrieve by keeping your rod tip high. The more you practice doing that, the better you'll get at it. Lipless Crankbaits. These guys.
Deadly.
If you're in Highland water, chuck and crank just to get a feel for if there's any structure out there, any cover that you might hit with it. It's a great bait to find the depth of water, find out what's out there, because it will tell you everything you're hitting. You can feel it. It will grab grass and let you know what's down there. These lures are such search tools, it's not even funny.
Yeah. Year round.
Yes. A jig, a heavy jig. If you don't have a sonar, you're fishing from the bank like most of us, that jig is your fish finder, in the sense of it's telling you the structure, the layout of the lake. If you get bit, well, you found a fish. But it's more important not to focus ever on where the fish are. It's always where the fish like to live. These baits are wiggle works. Last year, I went down to Georgia this month. It was 42-degree water to 39-degree water. It was 20-plus-mile-per-hour winds for the entire week I was fishing. I caught like 40 pounds in less than 3 feet of water. And I did that because it had rained the week before I got there, and I was targeting points and anywhere where water was flowing. That water flowing in was uncovering bluegill, plus carrying sediment from the forest flowing into that lake. And the fish, I caught one bass, it was 4+ pounds. This rattle trap in less than a foot of water in January, 39-degree water. And the biggest thing that helps us catch fish this time of year is not buying into any of the myths. Like I said earlier, fish can move as fast as they want to, whenever they want to. But being predators, they only do that when the food source is reliable and they think it's going away. These are all what we call, crankbaits, right?
Crankbaits, yeah.
So that
That's what we call these rattle traps.
Yeah,
they're not Bill Lewis, but we know people like to call them lipless. We're from the old school. These are rattle traps.
Our dad calls these things plugs. So
because that's what they are. Because if they hit you, they'll take a plug out of you.
Right, yes. Yeah, some people haven't heard this term, but so lipless in the winter. Cover water, cover water, cover water. This is the, matter of fact, keep casting. That is the biggest key to catching bass over any of this gear, these rods, anything, no matter what you're fishing with, even if it's your hand and some line. I've seen people catch fish bigger than you would have believed on a soda can. Mm-hmm. And we started catching bass on a rod, a stick, line and a hook with bread. And the reason I caught the first bass is it was eating the bluegill I was targeting. That's when I switched over to bass fishing. But keep casting. You can't ever catch any fish no matter what it is if your line's not in the water. Don't give up. Keep casting. The greatest people in the world, people know who Michael Jordan is, they like basketball. How many days do you think Michael Jordan was like, I won't take that extra free throw. I'm good enough. Never. Have that mentality when it comes to this, because we are dealing with animals that can think for themselves, that have free will. We cannot see them. We can accept this fact that I'm about to tell you. It's a harsh reality. How many fish do you think we cast by in the lakes we fish in the winter?
Thousands.
How many casts do you think it takes to cast by those fish?
1.
1, 8, 9?
1. Average 1.
And we're serious.
It's ridiculous the amount of fish that are in these bodies of water, even these man-made lakes. And it's ridiculous the amount of fish your lure passes each time you cast it. You may not believe it. It's indescribable.
There are hundreds of fish staring at your lure like, nope.
Every cast.
Nope.
Every cast.
Nope.
But that one cast, though, that last cast you make, after you've been outside in the summer heat for 13, 14 hours,
or in the
not getting anything.
14 degrees, wind blowing, the only reason the lake's open in that temperature, that's when it counts.
Every cast.
If you leave, that fish is not going to bite your bait. And I understand that a lot of people think that there's a timetable to when, I put this together, I threw it at the bait, the fish aren't hungry. Well, the bass fishing, with most fish you guys catch or have ever caught, are not hungry. We're capitalizing on the predatory instinct, their curious nature, and we made them make a quick decision. Most fish you ever catch are not hungry. And another reality is most fish we catch are not trying to eat our lure.
Nope.
They were chasing a live animal, and our lure was an easier target. This goes back to all the thousands of fish we cast by. There's a lot of real fish that they eat that they're staring at. So we're trying to take these lures that some don't even look real, y'all, and fool an animal with free will and has real food sitting right next to it.
You ever seen a fish look like this?
I mean, this looks like this fish went to a witch doctor and got a prosthetic leg, you know?
But you present this right all day, all day, all day.
So, you know, the wintertime can be tough fishing. Like I said, we prefer to power fish. I'm sure you all know what these are. These are Ned rigs, different types of Ned rigs. And with the Ned rigs I throw, which is, to tell you the truth, not often at all, these are all different style heads. There's different style heads and they're different weights. The different weights for rate of fall. The different style is for what I'm pulling it through and the propensity of getting hung and the ease of ripping it through that algae and grass I told you about earlier. The thing about these baits is you actually kind of wanted to get hung up in the weeds and grass this time of year, but not the algae. The algae covers the bait up, ruins the action. And it looks like one of those fish I told you about that has algae growing on it, which does not look appetizing to a predator. This is a Tuxen Jig, and this is a desperation lure. To tell you the truth. He's holding a fly. This is a custom hand-tied fly that's actually made for salmon, but I'll take anything and use it for bass, y'all. You gotta understand, bass are curious animals, and there's a lot of things that as long as it looks real enough, they'll come investigate it. You give them that sense of it might get away, they'll eat it. But this is a fly, this is a Tuxen Jig, and I'll throw these in the winter time if I cannot get a bite. And
These are good for crappie too.
I'll throw these on a spinning rod and we'll go down to 6-pound line sometimes for those. But overall in the winter, y'all, the thing is, if you notice, I don't have any soft plastics up here.
None.
Because we don't catch fish on soft plastics in the winter. Not here in Georgia. Grew up catching them on a jig. I could catch a bass every day in the winter. In Georgia on a black and blue jig. Doesn't matter. I will tell you that I didn't believe that these baits worked back then.
Man.
I had always in my tackle box. I would take one lure to the lake. I'd be out there for hours. Come back all happy because I caught one bass. Which I was happy, but it was a learning experience. And fish move just as fast as they do in the winter as they do in the summer. But they don't want to. So this is why, if you notice the theme of these baits, they all look very real. These are all bluegill. These are crawfish. These are all shad. These are all shad, bluegill, and crawfish. So, main food source in the winter time, crawfish generally hibernate. Most of them that are active are near the surface, but they will come out for heat and they'll dig and burrow into the rocks. Shad typically die off. They're small, can't handle the temperatures. So the most reliable food source is this, bluegill, year round.
Especially in Colorado.
Yes. And if you want to really capitalize on winter fishing, target on bluegill. Bluegill are always easier for a bass to catch and eat. They provide more nutrients than a shad. They require the bass taking a little more danger and risk involved with the spikes in the back. This is why bass jump up, shake their heads. They'll throw big old baits just like this because they're scared of these barbs getting stuck in their throats. So a lot of times we're out fishing, you'll have a huge slam in your bait, then it'll go limp. It's often that bass stunning its prey, flipping it around because it thinks it's a bluegill. And a lot of guys will tell you with these jerkbaits and topwater fishing, give it time. It's been my experience, you react as quickly as you feel anything.
Always.
Always.
Oh man.
This goes back to line selection. So, if you guys don't know, we're big guys. I'm 6'7", like 280.
I'm 6'4", over
So,
300.
When we pick our gear on line, this is 14, this is 20, this is 30 pound, this is 20, this is 15 pound,
25.
this is 20, 17. When you're setting a hook on a fish, you need your equipment to handle pretty much however much exertion you can exert on that gear while not losing your fish. And what I mean is, for types of power fishing like this swim bait, if you hook a fish on this, yes, you are actually supposed to set that hook as hard as you can and crank it till you get them. That's only possible if your gear can handle it. Now mind you, the gear that can handle me doing that with this bait is going to be very different than the gear that you might need at home trying to use this same lure. I mean, people might only be able to cast my rod that I throw this on 10 times before they're tired. So a lot of people hear suggestions about equipment. It's all tailor-made to fit. And for me, almost no standard suggestion for fishing equipment works because I'm bigger than almost all these anglers. And then I've tailored my fishing style to me, so I know what gear I need. So when I wouldn't recommend exactly telling anyone what type gear they need for them other than lures. And this misconception, if I can't work this bait right with the wrong setup, don't think that way. I've caught bass on a bright sunny day. It was 83 degrees. It was just beginning of summer on 20-pound line, crystal clear lake. Bass came up and drilled this thing. 20-pound fluorocarbon. So most people would think that's not the case, but I don't throw it on 20-pound every day. But like I said, if the situation calls for it, do it. And if you don't know, try it.
Definitely try it. Always try it. Especially when it's slow. When you're in a situation when it's slow and you're in an area where you know fish should be and you're not getting any bites, no reaction or anything, try some new stuff. That's when you start mixing your soft plastic arrangements. That's when you start throwing the same things you were throwing, but moving them differently. Yeah. Pausing them longer. Yes. Maybe a heavier line. Bring it from a different angle perhaps.
Or move it faster.
Yeah, speed it up. And vary your retreat.
Like he's saying, this has to become second nature to you. Because with fishing, it's not like you can give a person a regiment. Every situation, every cast is different. Things are constantly changing. The sun's always moving. The light's always changing underwater. And remember, when you think about fishing, fish don't see these baits the way we see them. When the lure is underwater, as it goes deeper into the water column, these colors actually change. And it's not that the paint on the lure is changing, it's just how water affects light as it goes under. Dark blue is the best color that can be seen underwater. It can be seen almost 600 feet in the ocean. What do we all know as bass fishermen? Black and blue is a staple. Why do we know that? It can be seen in all water conditions and is a natural color that fish see in their environment. A lot of people don't know this, but if you go out and dig up crawfish, they actually have blue claws.
Especially out here.
I mean, bright, brilliant blue, just like this. And their body's brown. They come in all kinds of colors. There are over 200 species in America of crawfish. So if you think about how the actual animal can look, then you factor in the water conditions you're fishing in. This is why you have such a wide variety of baits. See, these are all clown patterns. But you see, there are 3 different clown patterns that you can apply based off of what condition the water clarity is in. And it's a trial and error thing. There's no set rule to this. It's a natural thing. If you had success with this certain bait, you go back to the lake. If that was in, let's say, I don't know, a few days' time, I'd say start. It's not a bad idea to start with what you were doing, but if the conditions are completely different, it's probably a bad idea to start with that. You know, and it's frustrating, but fishing's a humbling thing, and you always got to remember you're trying to catch one fish at a time. So all those thousands of fish we said see your lure, you're only trying to trick one at a time. The beauty of that is, if you keep casting, you're actually statistically more likely getting closer to getting a bite. And when that first fish bites, his buddies want more.
The frenzy begins.
Yes.
I love it. All right, guys, real quick, we're going to wrap things up for this episode. We want to cover a couple of things that are out there that may not quite necessarily be clear. We want to straighten things out for you guys. Number one, we have to stop with my personal best. You guys, number one, it's redundant. Who else's best could you catch besides your own? Number two, fishing is not about best, quote unquote. Every day, whether you catch something or not, it's a new experience.
The best bass I caught was the last bass I caught. In the reference of what he just said, we don't use the term my personal best. Like you said, that's not how you speak correct English, and it's nothing against anyone, not trying to make fun of anybody. But the best fish that I've caught as far as bass fishing was not my largest. I've caught a lot of nice bass. To me, in reference to what people would call their best, it's the situation that I was dealing with when I caught that nice bass.
Exactly.
And the biggest bass that I've caught that would be my best was a 9-pound male, and I caught that just out of high school in Georgia. And the conditions were, this was a pre-spawn fish that I had no idea was on a bed, but I was at a community lake in an apartment complex, and there was this fountain out there. And I could only get within, it was a long cast I was making, but I could only get within, 10, 15 feet of this fountain. I had to use a select type of bait because I needed weight to get the distance. I needed to be shallow running because there were a lot of rocks and there was thick grass, so I needed to run shallow and need to float up to not get hung in this. But in my mind, I knew the time of year, I knew the auction, I knew the water was being just completely aerated, so there should be something there. Threw out one of my dad's old 20-year-old man square bells. It was so old it had a solid lip that was the same color as the body. And I threw that out there, and this fish hammered it. It was about a 13-pound female, and it shocked me because it drilled it, almost snatched the rod in my arm, and it jumped. And it threw the bait before I ever had a chance to set the hook. And I calmed him down and threw it back out there. Now, mind you, in my experience with bass over 10 pounds, if you get a strut like that on a bed, it's very spooked at this point. It's not likely it's going to bite again anytime soon. So my best hope was to just hope to God the fish was still there, honestly. So I cast back out there, and I get bit again. And this fish didn't jump to about halfway in, but I knew it wasn't fighting the size of the one I just lost. But I caught this fish, and it was a 9-pound male. I couldn't believe this was the paired fish with this female I just lost. But y'all gotta understand, a 9-pound bass, that's a male, is insane.
It's huge.
It's insane. And to me, that is what I tell people is my best bass, because not only is it rare to catch a bass that big, but the situation I was in, I couldn't get any closer. I couldn't really tell, and the further away you are from your bait, the less situational awareness you are of what's going on. This is why traditionally bass fishermen ride the shoreline and flip. They can see everything going on. Well, I like to put as much distance between me and whatever my target is, because fish are not stupid. They can feel the vibration of your boat. They can feel the water displacement. They can hear the sound of you approaching. Not that these animals aren't used to this, but it makes them that much more alert for the time you're there. That's what you don't need.
Not at all. For me, my personal best, or my best, I can't believe I just said that.
It's okay. It's a habit. You hear it
gotta
often.
break it. My best fish are all the fish I catch in Colorado. You know why? Because I haven't fished one natural lake in this state yet. So to be able to catch fish and trick the bass in these non-natural conditions, in these high-pressure situations, high-altitude situations, constantly changing weather, every fish I catch out here is my best.
I'm glad you mentioned the weather. The
Man.
weather changes here more than anywhere we've ever fished, except when we go to Glacier Park for pike, which is up in Montana. Like I said earlier, the underwater situation is always changing. And Bill Dance wrote a famous book years ago, and he's talking about how him and his buddy were worm fishing one day, and they noticed every time a cloud came over, they would not eat a black worm. When it was bluebird, they would eat a black and a blue worm. When the cloud blew over, they only ate the blue worm. And I've had a lot of situations like that in fishing where one little detail, if you paid attention to it, it made all the difference in the world. Thing is, without fishing enough, if you're not out there casting enough, you don't have enough experience to reference or to go back and bounce this information off of itself to see what you need to do next. So this is why getting on the water is the most important thing. Then you need a good memory. There's no point in going fishing and not remembering you had all this fun, But always believe you're going to catch a fish.
Definitely. If you don't believe it, why even go?
And remember this, y'all. Learn about what bass eat. Learn about what their food does. Learn where their food lives. Because you learn the behaviors of a bass, that's where the bass are going to be. Fishing, it's a lot of work. It requires a lot of dedication. It requires a lot of your time. But the return and that you get as a person, the return you can share with other people, it's worth it. And
plus, if push comes to shove, you can eat the fish.
You can survive.
It's survival.
Yes.
Who doesn't like that?
It's my thing. I love it. It's just what I do.
Nothing else like it. Real quick, you guys, if there are any fish you want to know specifically that we've posted, we always put the dates of the fish, the dates that we caught them. So if you want to scroll through Instagram or Facebook, look at the particular fish, no matter what time of year. If you want to know what we did to catch them, just send us a message with the date, and we'll tell you in the upcoming videos. Again, we appreciate you guys checking us out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. OGKC behind the lens there. We got much more to come. Again, we apologize.
Keep casting.
Get to the water every day. Keep casting. And don't let nobody say you can't.
Yeah.
All right. Y'all be easy.
Signing out.
Bye.